Hello and welcome to a very, very, very special episode of the Right Here, Right Now show. I normally have a very funky introduction, but I want to save that today because I'm really excited to bring you today someone that's been a real inspiration to me over the last 4 years in particular, nearly 5 years actually, and it's founder and CEO of WorldBlu, Traci Fenton. Let me bring her on. Hey, Traci, how are you?
Hi, Gary. It's so great to be with you.
Oh, well, thank you for joining me. I'm just to witness how your work is starting to come into being. Not only the last 5 years I've known you, but the last 12 months is just incredible. So why don't we start by you just giving those that are watching us live or maybe watch this back a little bit more of a lowdown as to Traci Fenton and WorldBlu, just as an introduction.
Yeah, well, it's so great to be with you, Gary. I mean, thank you. A joy and a privilege to be on the show. I'm the founder and CEO of WorldBlu. I founded WorldBlu 25 years ago. And what we do is we teach leaders how to lead their organizations and teams on the principles of freedom and organizational democracy rather than fear and control. My new book just came out this week called Freedom at Work: The Leadership Strategy for Transforming Your Life, Your Organization, and Our World. I think it comes out in the UK on March 8th, and it's trending in the top 20. So that's exciting right now. And we have worked with small to large brands all over the world, small to Fortune 500s, companies you will have heard of like WD-40, Zappos, Groupon, Hulu, Pandora, GE Aviation, and then a lot of small companies you haven't heard of before. Mind Valley, for those of you who know Mind Valley, worked with for years, Wyden. So many fabulous, wonderful companies, Menlo Innovations. And again, what we do is we help them solve their most pressing business problems from a foundation of freedom rather than fear. And this can apply to us individually, as you've experienced, all the way up to our organizational level. So that's what we do. I've had the privilege of working with clients in over 100 countries, and anyone can apply to be a member with WorldBlu who believes in these ideals and want to grow in this way.
So amazing. What an introduction. I'm just going to pop it back up again. So worldblu.com/freedom at work book. My copy, I'm looking forward to getting in my hands. I can see it behind you.
Yeah.
So exciting. And I think, it's exciting on the one hand because it's your life's work, right? You've been working on this for 25 years, but the times that we're in, not just with Russia, Ukraine, but with this real, what I call it, there's a lot of words for it, but for me, it's a real, the great realization that actually everything isn't as we thought it was, right?
Yeah.
And I'd love for you maybe to speak a little bit about the journey for you. Like, okay, the book's coming out now, but what have you observed in the work over the last, 2, 3, 5 years?
Well, the last 2 years have made it very clear how easy it is for us to be governed by fear instead of freedom. And what we teach at WorldBlu is, to build organizations to function on the principles of democracy. It really starts with a mindset of freedom. And I think the last 2 years for me, I've been talking about the impact of fear on us for many years now. But to see in the last 2 years how easy it has been for the world to be controlled by fear has been very enlightening, because I've been writing the book during this time. I signed the book deal in May of 2019. And then I was living in Boulder, Colorado at the time. And then my book was due May of 2020. So I spent the last 2 months in lockdown in Colorado. And so I'm not trying to be political, but what I'm talking about here is helping people understand the way that fear impacts us. The brain research tells us that the average person thinks 60,000 thoughts a day. 95% of those thoughts are the exact same thoughts we had the day before. And of those thoughts, 80% are negative and fear-based. So when we're in a state of fear, the brain research tells us that we become myopic and we only have one point of view. And we don't see the full range of possibility. So when you ask Gary about, how has the work evolved and how are things evolving? To me, it's just, it's a great privilege to be able to teach principles and ideals that I didn't invent. I didn't invent freedom and democracy, but these are timeless truths. And it's a great privilege to be able to steward timeless truths to people during turbulent times. And that's what we're here to do. That's what I'm here to do. And to help people live their lives from a place of freedom rather than fear, and to hopefully be a lighthouse for the world and be a light on a stormy sea and help others function in freedom rather than fear and control.
It's so wonderful. So I just want a full disclaimer for anyone that's watching us live or watching us back. So I had my first experience, and Traci actually references it in the book under Turner.
Yes. So many Garys in the book. My editor's like, can you call him a different name? I'm like, well, I don't want to make up a name. So Turner is in my book. Gary Turner is in my book.
But it was so profound for me when you took me through that process back in 2017, because I really couldn't see. I couldn't see that fear was governing my emotions, my reactions, my thought processes, right?
Yeah.
And when he took me through what is a very simple but very effective process, the power question practice,
Yeah.
it totally just allowed that overthinking, those stories that you're not good enough, it just dissolved, right? And we've all got that capacity, Traci, haven't we? It's not like a magic stick that you're trying to give anybody.
No, yeah, absolutely. And it was a joy, Gary, that, that's how we met. Would you say 4 or 5 years ago? Time flies. One of the things we teach, and I open the book with, there's 3 pillars of the Freedom at Work model: freedom-centered mindset, freedom-centered leadership, and freedom-centered organizational design. So that first pillar, freedom-centered mindset, is where I teach the power question practice, which is what you're talking about. And what that does is it helps people to identify when they're being handled by fear, and to break through that fear to find their power answer of what they would do if they weren't afraid. And the thing is, some of us can see that some of us are like, yeah, I can see I'm afraid right now, but others can't. And we have to learn how to recognize the symptoms of fear. I mean, when we say words like I'm stressed out or anxious or rushing around or disengaging, I mean, all of it, there's so many masks that fear wears. And so often people are just trying to slap Band-Aids on the masks of the problems of their life and not getting to the real root of it. And what we were able to do with you, and you were open to, is when you had that humble moment to say, no, wait a second, I'm actually being governed by fear. Okay, so what would I do if I weren't afraid? You had a breakthrough that basically opened up a whole new chapter of your life for you. So that's really what it's about.
And I think what's so interesting for me, and I've since not just since knowing you, but as I've been on my journey, which you was very early part of, and what I call it is a remembering, Traci.
Yes.
Right. It's a remembering actually that I am whole, that I am complete, that I am worthy, that I am able to speak my truth.
Yes.
Right. And all of that stuff's within all of us. Right. But we've been so conditioned to believe that someone has to give us permission or give us worth from the outside in. And I think that's what you do so brilliantly, is you make it so accessible to feel back and remember who and what we are, but with incredible results, right? Which I'm sure you'll share with us, like the actual impact of doing this it's not like fairy dust, right?
No, it's not fairy dust. It produces real results at an individual and organizational level. And you're making such an important correlation here between overcoming fear and knowing our worth. And this is, again, something else I talk about in the book under the second pillar of Freedom at Work. I discuss the 3 attributes of a freedom-centered leader. And one of those attributes is love. And specifically, we talk about it as self-worth. And I love to ask the question, it's in the book, on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the highest, how would you rate your level of self-worth and why? And most people, well, let me tell you a story about this. I once asked a room full of about 100 CEOs on a 1 to 10, how would you rate your level of self-worth and why? And then I asked them, everybody to put their hand up and close their eyes. They couldn't see what anyone else was doing. And I said, leave your hand up if you gave yourself above a 3. And a few hands went down. Leave your hand up if you give yourself above a 5, and a few hands go down. Leave your hand up if you give yourself above an 8 or higher on a 1 to 10. An 8 or higher, we consider kind of that high self-worth zone. Gary, every hand went down except 3. Only 3 people felt that they had high self-worth. And what do we mean by high self-worth? Self-worth is being comfortable in who you are, loving who you are. It's not confidence. Confidence is situational. It's not even self-love. It's a worthiness. It's knowing that you are worthy, that you matter. And when we know we're worthy, that helps us also break through a lot of fear that tries to come up and say exactly like you were saying, I'm not enough. That's a fear that's trying to play out. And it's a fear that most people have, which is I'm not good enough to do whatever the universe is calling me to do.
And we can really, like, the thing I love about what you're doing at WorldBlu is it's principle based. I'd love to speak a bit more about that, right? It's like, it's based on, and I also love your humility to say, this isn't my, it's not your work, but you've got your way of bringing this timeless sort of humanity basically to the fore, right?
Yeah, I feel like I'm in a relay race and I'm just one more of the millions of people who have stood really for freedom. And I've been passed one of the many batons in my own niche and in my own way, and so you teed me up for that third pillar perfectly, Gary. So the third pillar of the Freedom at Work model is freedom-centered organizational design. Okay, so what are these principles you're referring to? So I spent a decade researching what the heck is democracy, because so many of us, we say we love democracy. We stand with the Ukrainians, we stand with whomever the issue is at the time. And, when I started WorldBlu when I was 21 and I was in college and I was asked to do a conference on democracy. And I thought democracy meant voting and old dudes in Washington, D.C. and politics. That was what democracy was to me. But what I realized was my purpose in life has always been about helping people realize their fullest potential. And I knew that from a very young age. But how do you realize your full potential? You certainly can't realize your full potential in an environment of fear and control. You can only realize your full potential in an environment of freedom. Well, what's the framework for freedom? It's actually democracy. So I went and I was like, well, what the heck is democracy? And I spent a decade researching the principles of democracy, discovered that there are 10 principles, and this has been researched outside of WorldBlu. People, PhDs, whatever, have taken what I've discovered and identified is probably a better word than discovered, but identified. And these 10 principles are principles like accountability, choice, dialogue and listening, transparency, the decentralization of power. And these 10 principles, and they're principles, not values, because principles are unchanging. Principles are like the principles you use to build a house, okay? You could build a small house or a big house. Those architectural principles are the same. Values are what guide behavior. So specifically, I'm saying these are the principles of democracy. And all 10 must be in place in order to have a democratic system. And even if people can't identify, Gary, the principle of, decentralization is missing from a system. When you see people getting upset, whether it's in a organizational workplace or an organization like a country, it's because these principles are missing. And I can read the news every day and see the issues and see which principles of democracy are missing. And we get upset about it because at our core, we know we're supposed to be free. That is our sacred right, is to be free. And whether people can articulate it or not, they can say, I feel something's off here. And I can see through this lens, it's these 10 principles and which ones are missing. So in the book, I give 100 best practices overall. So 10 best practices for each of these 10 principles and how to put them into operation, curated from the hundreds of companies we've worked with through the years.
It's just like, I'm firing up all of my body at the moment again, because it's been so long since we've had this sort of catch up, and like, I know so much about you and what you're bringing to the world. But for me, where I'm at in my level of consciousness and awareness and trying to understand how these systems work, it's becoming more valuable from my point of view, because I'm able to see just how powerful those three intersections are, right? Because if I look at a lot of, organizational design or mindset, a lot of people take them as separate parts. They don't bring them together, Traci, which is the point, right? Because nature is based on diversity. It's based on the interrelationality is not based on just one silo, and you're bringing holistically those three things together, grounded in principles. And it's becoming more powerful for me, to be honest.
Good.
I think what you're doing.
No, you're right. It's an ecosystem. And the thing is, Gary, when you're working with timeless ideas, like I've had the privilege of doing, it's like a well, and you go deeper as you understand more. And as you understand more of what's going on in the world, you understand things are happening. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm now getting this on a completely different level. And I've certainly been on that journey myself with these ideas, and it's never boring. I mean, I've been doing it for 25 years. It's always fresh every day, because I'm also making new connections every day and going, oh my gosh, And when I started off, to your point of these different silos, I thought the way you transformed a culture was you just go in and, rearrange the furniture and dress it up a little bit more nicely, and then bam, you have a great new culture. I didn't realize it is that intersectionality of one's mindset, how you lead yourself and others, and then those systems and processes and how they're designed. And you have to have all three of those. And I say it like, oh, it does. So simple: mindset, leadership, design. Oh, it took me a long time to figure that out. And now that I figured it out, I want to make everybody else's lives a lot easier. You don't have to spend 25 years figuring it out. I already did. Now you can just implement it.
Brilliant. And here's one way to do it. Get the book. Get the book.
I've been waiting. Yeah, get the book.
Oh, it's amazing. Well, I want to just acknowledge a couple. So some good friends of ours have popped along. I just want to check the comments. So we have Annie joining us saying, so agree how manipulating the emotion of fear can be used. It's debilitating. Perry, got to acknowledge the Mr. Perry. So Perry is the reason I met Traci. So I want to put a massive, big virtual hug out to Perry. Yeah, just talking about 2016 in Miami, referencing Annie as well. It's debilitating and pairing, causing us to act out of our ordinary and suppress our extraordinary skill. What a beautiful addition.
Oh.
Suppression, right? You know that part of the reason I had the fear I had is because I wasn't expressing emotion, right?
Oh.
That power question wasn't just unlocking my ability to talk to my global HR director.
Right.
That power question was a catalyst that I don't need to tell myself I'm not good enough anymore based on being bullied as a kid. Do you remember that?
Oh, 100%.
That was part of it, right? That was part 100%.
Of it. I mean, the thing is, Gary, and you bring out such an important point here, is fear wants us to dim our light. Fear wants to suppress our light within. Fear does not want you to go live your purpose and let your light shine and help people. And so think about all the people who are walking around every day self-mesmerized by fear, and by the fear that they're not good enough. And I can't let my light shine or my purpose shine forth, because what are others going to think of me? What if I'm not good enough at doing it? What if I fail? What if I don't have enough? XYZ. Mm-hmm. So it's that suppression of our light is exactly what fear tries to do. And you got to kind of learn, like, fear is the ultimate, what's the term? Psychological warfare. Like, fear is the ultimate at inner psychological warfare. And you really got to learn its tactics so that you can tell it. I tell it to F off, when it tries to come up, I'm like, sorry, am I allowed to say that? You be a little tough with this stuff, you got to stop. So often, Gary, what people are doing is they think that the fear or that low self-worth voice, they think it's them. And they need to understand instead it's the gremlin on the shoulder, yapping it away. And you have got to say to it, get out of here, get out of here. And of course, the power question practice and a lot of other tools I give within the book help people to do that. But you can only say get out of here if you know your worth. If you know you're worthy, that you don't have to listen to that, So that's what it's really about. And now I can shine. Yeah.
I love that. And I'm going to throw a little bit, like I say, we never prompt these conversations, but I'm really interested. What did you learn? What did you learn about yourself as Traci going through writing this book? Was there something new you learned? What types of fears were popping up for you that you had to navigate? Maybe just give us a little bit of that journey of writing the book for you in terms of how you're modeling the work, Traci.
Yeah. Well, Gary, you hear from people all the time, like horror stories of like, I tried to write the book and I was staring at a blank page and I couldn't do it. And for me, it was so easy and hard from the standpoint of I was so ready to give birth to this baby. I mean, I knew I wanted to write the book since starting WorldBlu. And I've been working to do the research and the proof of the theory and get all the companies, And so I was just so ready to do it. And what I did was I took my work week and I took the 5-day work week and put it into 3 days. And I spent Thursdays and Fridays writing. And I was living in Colorado. What I was surprised about is I thought, because I'm a morning person, I thought I'd get up and write right away. And I found I couldn't do that. I had to actually get up, have some prayerful time, as I'm a spiritual person. I had to go for a hike with my dog in the mountains. And then I tended to write more in the afternoon. And I mean, I already had the theory worked out. It was all the years before that was so hard. So at this point, when I got the book deal, it was, I could just sit down and write it. And the joy was curating through over 1,700 best practices and picking out the 100 that we knew worked, picking out which companies to highlight in the book, picking out the stories. And I mean, at times I'd be writing, I'd just be bawling like, oh, this is so moving. I hope everyone else likes this because I'm loving it, And my original manuscript was 172,000 words. And my publisher was like, yeah, it's got to be 70,000 words. So then you cut it down. So it's been a joy, I signed the book deal May of 2019, and here we're doing this March of 2022. So it's a long journey, and I'm just so excited for the book to be out because I believe it has a healing message. It's not my theory, it's proof. And I truly believe it can help so many people.
Wow. What I'm so intrigued by, one of my biggest learnings the last 2 years, Traci, and I'm wondering what your thoughts are about this, is one of my biggest tensions has been this, knowing that we are all connected, we do come from love, we are one human race, etc. But if we stay there and don't acknowledge the systemic challenges we're going through, we're sort of bypassing the realities that lots of people are facing. And I'm wondering, how's that been for you watching like the last few years? Because I sense that what you're bringing to the world allows us to hold those two views together because of the system. But maybe you want to add, build, or challenge on that reflection of mine.
Yeah, well, the core of democracy, which is what we're teaching, is a leadership style, democratic leadership style. You have to know everyone is worthy. You have to know everyone has worth. And what we're teaching people how to do is to build those systems and processes based on these 10 proven principles. It's principle-based, not personality-driven. And being principle-based, these are universal principles, principle of fairness and dignity, the principle of transparency, the principle of dialogue and listening. And so when you put these principles in place, it naturally evolves, Gary, these systems and processes that we've had going that have been fear-based, that aren't about bringing out the full worth of every single person, no matter who you are and where you are in the world. And so that's what democracy does. It brings out and values the worth of every single person. There's no other system that does that. And so we have to understand what the framework for freedom is. And this is the freedom within becomes the freedom without, externally. The internal freedom we find first, and then we can express that external freedom. So, that's what it's really about. And to your kind of a little bit addition to your previous comment and question as well, you kind of asked like, what big revelations did you have about yourself writing the book? I had already kind of worked through so much of it. It was more of for me, I'd been on that hero's journey. I'm in that return phase, which is when you walked through the fire, and now you're ready to really help others. And what I learned was just how these ideas work so well, and they can address every single problem we have. They really do. And I can't just keep this gift for myself. It has to be for everyone. And that's what the book allows to have happen. Bless everyone. Yeah.
That's amazing. I want to just capture, we've still got Annie and Perry with us. Perry, I'm so grateful, Perry, you captured that comment. Principle-based, not personality-driven, is the sustainable way to make. Do you know something? Just thank you, Perry, for capturing that, because that really struck me as well. right? It's almost like because of what you're bringing to the world, like we can just start with a blank page, right? Like we don't have to keep dragging this heavy weight of, you know, fear and previous belief systems. It is okay to let go of so much. And how much is letting go part of co-creating this new freedom at work paradigm? How much does that play into this, Traci, out of interest?
Well, absolutely 100%, because think about it, how personality driven we are in ourselves. We spend most of our time thinking about ourselves, you know, and what we have to do is get out of our own sense of personality and let the light shine forth. And doesn't mean it's a difference to me between individuality and personality. That's why we teach our Fearless Purpose course. You know, it's living your purpose. See, when we're struggling with personality, we become very self-centered. But when we're on purpose, and we're focused on living our purpose. And when you're living your purpose in life, which we help people develop a 1-sentence purpose statement, you're other focused, you're outward focused, you know, and that takes a thought out of self, and you're reaching and going for that higher goal. And yeah, it's really hard at times, but you're able to keep going because you know what you're doing it for. And I think we all have to be operating on principles. We live in a time in our world that is all about personalities, you know, and how big are those personalities and a following of personalities, you know. That's not what we're about. We're about people living on principle and bringing those principles into their lives. And when you do that, you're on the rock, and you can, when the winds blow, you can be that lighthouse grounded on the rock that leads others safely home.
So beautiful. We're into the last few minutes. I love Perry, Annie, or anybody else. If you've got a question for Traci, I'd love to pose it to Traci as we start to wrap up this conversation. If you've got something you want to ask directly, please do share in the chat, and I'll pose that. I'd love just what's next for Traci Fenton, Miranda Ash, and the WorldBlu team. Like, what's the vision? Where do you see yourself in the next 3 to 5 years? A completely crazy question, I know. Who knows? But like, what do you hope to be doing more of in the years to come, Traci?
Well, our vision is to see a world, Gary, where every single person can live, lead, and work in freedom rather than fear. So I just gave birth to this book 2 days ago publicly, even though I've been working with it. So I kind of feel like I'm still like, woo, you know, and now it's like, people need to read it. You know, they need to read it, and they need to let themselves be transformed by the ideas that I've had the privilege of working with for so long, my team and I. And let's start to see the leavening effect that these ideas, these timeless truths can have on our world. And, you know, we're a global membership company. Anyone can join and get access to all the courses that we teach on mindset, leadership, and design. We want to teach more people. We want to help more people. So it's really about just continuing to spread the messages. And we're going to be doing a lot of virtual events all over the world. The book is coming out already in Hungarian this summer. I'm going into the studio on Monday, and I'll start recording the audio version of the book. So there's going to be a lot coming with the message.
That's amazing. And I'm looking forward to the Hungarian audio book by you, Traci. That's going to be interesting.
That'll be interesting.
Growth edge. There's a growth edge for you.
Push myself to grow.
So just want to say thanks for staying with us, Annie, being of service. Traci is beautiful.
Thank you.
And yeah, interesting. Yes, once detached and focused, you remove yourself from the ego. Yes. Absolutely. Just stunning. I want to give you the last word. Traci, anybody again watching this live or watching this back, please do go and check out worldblu.com/freedom@work book. Just absolutely stunning. And Perry, okay, Traci's favorite practice from the book. I know it's a tough one, but you just know it hits the spot time and time again. Oh, nice question.
Oh, Perry, no one's asked me that question because there's 100 of them. Okay. I'm flashing through my mind. Oh my goodness, what's one of my favorites? Well, let's end on a cheeky note, right? It's not
cheeky. We like cheeky.
I have many favorite best practices, but I end the book because I want to be a little cheeky with a best practice called "What Color Are Your Balls?" And that best practice is one of our companies. They have 3 buckets, and you have three different color balls, red, green, and yellow. And as you leave work each day, tennis balls. And as you leave, you drop your tennis ball in the bucket that has a smiley face on it, a frowny face, or just a middle of the road face. And so people are voting as they're leaving work each day with, how do I feel? I feel good, I feel not so good, or I don't really know how I feel. And that is just a fun way to kind of instantly get feedback. And the reason I realized I just confused, because 2 companies have done this. One does the tennis balls. Another one is they actually do the red, green, and yellow ball. And so you put, if green is feeling good, red is not so good, yellow is okay. So that's another version of this called What Color Are Your Balls? It's just a fun and simple way, but it gives you really good indication. It allows people to vote. It allows people to check in with how they're feeling. And then leaders can take that information each day and kind of look at levels of engagement, levels of innovation, success. It's just a quick and easy way to get it done. So book is full of a lot of fun ideas and stories.
Love it. Well, look, thank you for sparing your time. Really grateful to know you, Traci. Again, thank you, Perry, for the connection to Traci 5 years ago. Mad. But keep leading your light. It's amazing. And I look forward to speaking to you again soon, Traci. And thanks, everyone, Annie, Perry, and anybody else that joined us. And go get the book and speak to you soon.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Take care.